Hello everyone, I wish you peace and happiness. Are you all healthy? Today, I will continue to tell you about the difficult, impoverished and challenging days that Huyen and her mother went through to make a living. In the small garden, Huyen, Da, and little Micah kneel together in front of the altar on Huyen and Appo's father and Appo's death anniversary. On the simple altar, incense smoke rises thickly. Beside it is a prepared offering of rice and food that Huyen carefully arranged. Huyen clasped her hands in front of her chest, her eyes quietly sad as she remembers her late father. Next to her, Da and Micah also bow their heads respectfully. In the quiet space, the three of them light incense, praying that their father in the distant place is at peace and always watching over Huyen and little Micah for their safety. The gentle smoke of incense spreads throughout the small garden, making the memorial moment warm and sacred. In the morning inside the small house, as mother and daughter just woke up, gentle sunlight streamed through the window slit. Huyen picked up a bamboo broom and began sweeping the house. Seeing her mother working, little Micah ran over happily and said, end quote, "Mom, let me sweep the house." End quote. Then Micah gently took the broom from her mother and Appo's hand. She carefully swept every corner of the small house. Huyen stood beside her daughter, smiling softly with love. In the simple house, the sound of the bamboo broom swishing on the floor blended with the laughter of mother and daughter, creating a warm and peaceful morning. Huyen went into the kitchen to get some remaining ash from the previous day. She took the ash outside to the garden, gently spreading and pouring it around each tree to provide extra nutrients. After finishing, Huyen carefully took a small pair of scissors and pruned away the old, dry branches and the overly dense shoots on the bean plants. She worked while attentively observing each tree. The neatly trimmed branches made the plants more airy, allowing them to receive sunlight and continue growing. Huyen hoped that after some time of care, the bean plants in her small garden would become lush, produce many flowers, and bear plenty of fruit so that she and her mother could have more vegetables for meals and sell at the market. While Huyen was taking care of the bean plants outside in the garden, little Micah ran happily to her mother. In her hand, she was holding a small flower branch she had just picked from the garden. Micah held the branch up in front of her mother and cheerfully said, end quote, "Mommy, I give you this." End quote. Huyen smiled tenderly, gently took the flower branch and stroked her daughter and Appo's head. She bent down to carry Micah into her arms, and the two of them went to the small ditch in front of the house to wash off the mud on their hands and feet after a morning of work. However, today the water in the ditch was rising high and flowing swiftly, flooding the small bridge in front of the house. Huyen looked at the water flow for a moment and then decided not to put Micah down nearby. She still carried her daughter and took Micah to the small bathroom that Da had diligently built for them since yesterday. Entering the new bathroom, Huyen gently set Micah down, washed her hands and feet that were still muddy, and looked at the simple but sturdy bathroom. She smiled softly, her heart recalling Da and Appo's care and kindness for her and her daughter. Da and Appo's motorcycle stopped in front of Huyen and Appo's house gate. He parked the bike neatly by the fence and quickly went into the yard. Not seeing the mother and child inside the house, Da called out loudly, "Huyen! Micah!" From outside the ditch, Huyen and Appo's voice responded, "I and Appo's am here." Hearing the reply, Da followed the small path toward the ditch. Seeing Huyen and Micah there, he asked in surprise, "What are you two doing?" Huyen, while washing the mud off her hands and feet, smiled and replied, "I just finished gardening, so I brought Micah here to wash her hands and feet." Da looked at the water outside the ditch rising higher, and the bamboo bridge was almost submerged. He looked worriedly at the mother and child and said, "Today the water is so high, you two must be careful." Huyen nodded softly. Micah stood beside him, looked at Da and cheerfully called, "Uncle Da." Hearing the child and Appo's call, Da smiled and stepped closer to the mother and child amid the peaceful morning by the small ditch. Da looked at the mother and child and suddenly remembered yesterday and Appo's story. He said, "Yesterday I went to work and saw a nearby durian garden that was ripe. Do you want to buy some to sell at the market? If you want, I can take you to buy them." Huyen immediately nodded. Yes, it would be great if we could buy some. With extra durians to sell at the market, my mother and I can earn a little more money. After saying that, De stepped down close to the edge of the ditch. He gently carried Micah from Huyen and Apo's arms and then reached out to help her step onto the bank. De looked at the rising water and softly said, "The water is so high today as in Apo's. It?" Huyen looked at the ditch and replied, "Yes, it and Apo's. It's been raining a lot lately, so the water is high, sir." De looked at the bamboo bridge partially submerged in the water and said, "When the water recedes, I will fix the bridge for you and your mother. It and Apo's. It's dangerous to cross when it and Apo's flooded like this." Huyen smiled softly, feeling warm inside from Da and Apo's concern. Micah stood beside her happily holding her mother and Apo's hand, and the three of them returned to their small house to prepare for buying durians. Huyen went inside the house, carefully closed the door, and put on a thin shirt. Outside, De gently helped Micah put on a hat and adjusted it neatly. Huyen stepped out, locked the house door carefully, and then left the yard with Da and Micah. De bent down, picked up Micah, and took the child to the motorcycle parked in front of the gate. He gently sat Micah on the bike and told her to sit very securely. Huyen sat behind to check the bike again and started the engine. The sound of the engine echoed through the quiet village road. The bike gradually started moving, carrying the three of them away from the small house toward the durian orchard that Da had seen yesterday. After a long journey, De finally took Huyen and Micah to the durian garden. The car stopped in front of the gate. De got out of the car, then carried Micah in his arms, while Huyen walked beside him. The three of them entered the cool green garden, where tall durian trees were heavily laden with fruit. After walking a short distance, they met the garden owner. De politely asked, "Do you have durians for sale in your garden? My mother and I want to buy some to take to the market." The owner of the garden happily nodded and said, "Of course. It and Apo's. It's the season now and the durians are just ripe. Follow me and I and Apo's. I'll show you the trees with ripe fruit." Saying that, the owner led Da and Huyen deeper inside. De still carried Micah in his arms, while Huyen followed closely beside him. After a while, they stopped in front of a large durian tree, where the green leaves shaded the spiky durian fruits that were gradually changing color, emitting their characteristic aroma. The owner pointed to the tree and said, "Here these fruits have fallen ripe. They're perfect for selling." Huyen looked at the ripe durian fruits on the tree and politely asked the gardener, "Can I try some?" The gardener happily nodded, "Of course you can. Try it, and if you like it, we can take more." Then the gardener approached a tree trunk, carefully cut down a ripe durian. He placed the fruit on the ground and said, "This one has fallen already. This durian is very good since it and Apo's immature tree. The flesh is very soft, not starchy." The gardener gently cut through the spiky shell with a knife. The durian gradually opened, revealing each golden, soft and fragrant segment. The aroma of durian spread throughout the garden, making Micah delighted as she watched. The gardener took a segment and handed it to Huyen, then gave another segment to Da. Huyen carefully peeled the durian segment, tasted it, and nodded gently. "Delicious, brother, the yellow segment is fatty and fragrant." Da also enjoyed the durian segment, smiling and saying, "It and Apo's is really tasty. If we sell this type at the market, everyone would love it." Micah, standing nearby, was also given a small piece by Huyen. The three of them together enjoyed the ripe yellow durian segments right in the lush green garden, creating a joyful and warm atmosphere. After tasting the delicious durian segments, they started harvesting durians with the orchard owner. He pulled the iron ladder closer to the tree trunk and carefully climbed up each step. When he reached the appropriate height, he continued to cling to the trunk, stepping along the large branches to find ripe durian fruits. Huyen stood below, looking up with both worry and keen observation. He approached each fruit, gently tapping the shell with the handle of a knife to check for ripeness. After hearing a deep, solid sound, he nodded, end quote. This one is ready, end quote. He held the durian firmly, carefully cut the stalk with a knife and slowly lowered the fruit. Huyen quickly held out her hat to catch it, catching the durian and gently placing it on the ground. End quote. Be careful, end quote. Huyen called out as she looked up. He smiled and replied, end quote. Don and Oppos, T worry, I'll be careful, end quote. Then he continued along the large branches, searching for other ripe durians. Meanwhile, Huyen and the orchard owner gathered the freshly picked fruits into a corner, preparing to collect them to take home. The next ripe durian fruits were discovered by Da on the large branches one after another. He carefully tapped each fruit with the handle of a knife to check for ripeness, then selected the fully ripe ones. This one is ready, sister, he said, gently cutting the stem, holding the durian firmly, and lowering it from the tree. Huyen quickly held up her hat to catch each fruit. She carefully cradled the durian down, placing it alongside the previously picked ones. In this way, they continued to move along the branches, while Huyen patiently waited below to catch the durians. Every time a fruit was lowered, Huyen gently placed it next to the others. Soon there was a pile of fragrant ripe durians under the tree. Micah stood nearby watching her mother and Da work, excitedly pointing at the tree and exclaiming, Uncle Da has picked so many durians. Hearing Micah, Da chuckled and continued carefully harvesting the remaining ripe durians from the tree. After harvesting the ripe durian fruits, Da carefully climbed down from the tree and stepped down the iron ladder. He gathered the harvested durians, gently placing each one into woven baskets in an orderly manner. After paying the owner, Huyen took out the money and handed it to the owner politely, saying, end quote. Here and Oppos, the money, sir. Thank you for allowing us to buy durians, end quote. The owner happily accepted the money and said, end quote. Come back again next time, end quote. He bent down to check the woven baskets filled with durians. He lifted the basket onto his shoulder, holding it firmly, then turned to carry Micah in his arms. Huyen also carefully carried 2 durians in her hands. The 3 of them together walked through the lush green garden. He carried the heavy durian basket on his shoulder, one hand holding Micah, while Huyen carried the 2 durians beside her. The 3 of them walked and chatted slowly, crossing the rows of durian trees to return to the motorbike waiting outside the garden gate. He gently placed Micah sitting at the front of the motorcycle, instructing her to sit very securely. Huyen sat behind, holding onto the durian fruits. He checked the durian basket again before starting the engine. The bike gradually moved, taking all 3 of them away from the durian garden. After a while, they arrived at their familiar market area. He rode inside and looked for a convenient spot to stop. Huyen got off the bike, found an empty corner along the walkway, and placed the 2 durian fruits on the ground. He quickly carried the bamboo basket full of durians down from the bike. He brought it to Huyen and gently set it down. End quote. Let me help you. End quote. Huyen smiled. End quote. Yes, thank you. End quote. The 2 arranged the durian fruits neatly into a small corner. Micah stood beside, curiously looking at the spiky durian fruits, while Da and Huyen began preparing their selling spot. Amidst the busy morning market, the fragrant smell of durian gradually spread, attracting passers-by. Seeing Huyen had arranged everything stably, Da looked at her and said, Stay here and sell. I am going to work now. I will come back later to pick up you and your mother. Huyen nodded and smiled, replying, Yes, go to work. Come back later. Da got on the bike and started the engine. Before leaving, he turned back to look at the mother and daughter one more time before slowly riding away. The motorcycle left the market area, merging into the busy village road. Huyen sat beside the durian fruits, silently watching Da and Apo's figure disappear into the distance. A gentle smile appeared on her face. With Da by her side to help, Huyen felt that although the road ahead still had many difficulties, it also seemed less burdensome. Huyen sat upright beside the durian fruits, watching the stall and waiting for customers. After a while, a few passers-by noticed the neatly arranged ripe yellow durians and curiously stopped by. One woman approached, pointed at a durian and asked, "How much do you sell this durian for, miss?" Huyen happily stood up. "Yes, it was just picked this morning. It and Apo's. A long-term tree durian with golden ripe flesh, fragrant and not starchy." The customer picked up one fruit, examined it carefully, and asked further, "Can I try opening one for you to see?" Huyen quickly nodded, carefully cut open the durian with a knife. The shiny yellow, soft flesh appeared, and the aroma spread, attracting the attention of nearby customers. "The flesh looks so beautiful. I and Apo's, I'll take one." The woman happily paid Huyen. This was the first customer to buy durian that day, making Huyen unable to hide her joy. She received the money, thanked the customer, and gently placed the durian into her bag. Then, a few other customers also came to browse the stall one after another. The next customers took turns coming to buy durians. Huyen happily introduced each fruit, carefully weighed them, and received the money. Before long, almost all the durians brought to the market had been sold. In the end, only one fruit remained, and Huyen decided to keep it to take home. Huyen tidied up the stall and then took Micah and Apo's hand. Mother and daughter went home together. On the way, Huyen stopped at a small shop to buy some paper offerings. Later, the two of them passed by another shop, and Huyen saw some delicious grilled sausages and bought one for Micah. Mother and daughter found a clean spot by the roadside and sat down to rest. Huyen handed the sausage to her daughter. "Here, eat this, dear." Micah happily took the sausage, eating and smiling. Huyen sat beside her daughter, watching her eat happily, feeling joyful inside. Da and Apo's motorcycle just appeared at the market area. After parking the bike, he looked around to find the mother and child. As soon as he saw Huyen and Micah sitting and resting by a small shop, Da hurriedly walked over. "Here they are." Huyen looked up and smiled. "Are you done?" Da nodded, then gently bent down to pick up Micah. Micah happily wrapped her arms around Da and Apo's neck. Huyen packed up her belongings and then walked with Da toward the motorcycle. When they arrived, Da placed Micah and Huyen on the back seat. He checked everything again, then started the engine. The bike gradually moved away from the market area, taking Da, Huyen, and Micah back to their small house. The motorcycle gradually stopped in front of Huyen and Apo's small house gate. At this moment, Micah was sound asleep in her mother and Apo's arms after a long day. Huyen gently carried her child down from the bike, trying not to wake her. Da parked the bike, looked at the mother and daughter, and softly said, and quote, "You two go inside and rest. I and Apo's am heading back now." End quote. Huyen smiled softly and nodded, end quote. "Yes, please be careful on your way back." End quote. Da waved goodbye to the mother and daughter and then turned his bike around. The sound of the engine echoed through the quiet village road. Huyen stood in front of the gate, holding Micah, who was sleeping peacefully, quietly watching Da and Apo's figure until his bike disappeared from sight. Huyen hugged Micah and entered the small house. She gently opened the door and sat down on the bamboo chair, still holding her child in her arms. Micah was sleeping soundly, her head resting on her mother and Apo's shoulder. Huyen held the hat in her hand, slowly fanning her child to help her sleep better. After sitting for a while, Huyen stood up, gently opened the bedroom door, and carried Micah inside. She carefully laid her daughter down on the bed, straightened the pillow, and covered her with a thin blanket. Seeing that Micah was still sleeping soundly, Huyen went to open the window to make the room cool and fresh. A gentle breeze from outside blew in, bringing the cool afternoon air. Huyen stood by the bed, looking at her daughter, softly smiling, then gently took the hat and fanned Micah to keep her cool. Huyen stepped outside to the yard, approaching the water jar. She scooped a bowl of clean water and placed it in front of Pippi. Pippi happily moved closer, bowing down to drink each sip. At that moment Micah also woke up. The child stepped outside, sat next to Pippi, and gently stroked the dog and Appo's head. Huyen looked at Micah and Pippi together and then smiled. The small yard became peaceful, with the sound of Pippi drinking water mixed with Micah and Appo's cheerful chatter. A gentle afternoon began again in the small house of the mother and her child. Just arrived home, I parked my bike in the yard and went inside to change clothes. A while later, I took a plastic bucket and went to the water pond next to the house. I placed the bucket on the bank, rolled up my pants and carefully stepped into the pond. The peaceful afternoon scene was quiet, with only the gentle sound of water moving with each of his steps. Huyen took the opportunity to sweep the small house, gathering the remaining dust on the floor and neatly stacking everything into a corner. After cleaning up, she went into the kitchen, bent down to light the fire. The logs started to burn, and the gentle smoke rose up and spread across the roof. Huyen fanned the fire to ignite it, then went out to fetch the bamboo basket containing durian. She carefully took out the remaining durian and placed it on the bamboo table. Huyen looked at the durian and gently smiled. De waded into the pond and approached the pre-soaked fishing net. He carefully pulled up the net, while gathering the edges towards the end to prevent crabs and small fish from escaping. Once the net was pulled in, De untied the string at the end of the net, then lifted the net and poured the entire catch into a plastic bucket. Small crabs crawled among the fish, splashing water inside the bucket. De looked at the result and smiled. Although the catch wasn't Appo's large, it was enough for him to prepare a delicious meal for himself and possibly share some with Huyen and her mother. Huyen took a few eggs, washed them clean, and gently placed them into a pot. She poured in enough water, put the pot on the stove, and then bent down to add a few pieces of firewood. The flames caught quickly, and the smoke from the stove billowed up thickly, causing Huyen to fan lightly with her hand. She took some garlic cloves and placed them into a small basket, then called Micah, and quote, "Micah, bring the garlic basket outside to sit and peel for me. It and Appo's very smoky here, so be careful and peel each clove for me." End quote. The crackling of the firewood blended with Micah and Appo's cheerful chatter outside the porch, creating a simple and warm family scene. De crawled out of the pond onto the shore, holding a plastic bucket filled with crabs and fish he just caught. He placed the bucket down beside him, then carefully bent down to select each one. The algae, leaves, and small debris caught in the bucket were picked out, gathered, and discarded to the side. He looked at the small live fish, gently releasing each one back into the pond. The fish flapped their tails and quickly swam away in the water. De carried a plastic bucket full of crabs and fish home. Upon arriving in the yard, he placed the bucket down and poured everything into a plastic basin to easily select each one. After a while of sorting, De found 4 fairly large and healthy crabs. He carefully caught each one with a small net and lifted it up to look. Seeing the 4 crabs in the net, De smiled softly, thinking of Huyen and Micah. These crabs would surely make the 2 of them very happy to eat. Saying that, De held the net tightly, preparing to take the 4 crabs to Huyen and Appo's house. He thought to himself that with a few more fresh crabs today and Appo's meal for the mother and daughter would be even more delicious. De entered the bathroom, washed thoroughly, and changed into dry clothes. He took 2 small wooden chairs, stacked them upside down against each other, and used one hand to carry both chairs. With his other hand, De held a net paddle containing 4 crabs. Before leaving, he checked the door and locked the house carefully. De went to his motorbike, hung the crab net on the front of the bike securely, and then placed the 2 wooden chairs on the bike. He started the engine and gradually rode to Huyen and Appo's house. On the way, De thought about how happy he would feel seeing his mother and daughter look at the fresh crabs he brought, and he felt joyful. The bike traveled along the village road toward Huyen and Apo's small house. De entered the bathroom, washed thoroughly, and changed into dry clothes. He took 2 small wooden chairs, stacked them upside down against each other, and used one hand to carry both chairs. With his other hand, De held a net paddle containing 4 crabs. Before leaving, he checked the door and locked the house carefully. De went to his motorbike, hung the crab net on the front of the bike securely, and then placed the 2 wooden chairs on the bike. He started the engine and gradually rode to Huyen and Apo's house. On the way, De thought about how happy he would feel seeing his mother and daughter look at the fresh crabs he brought, and he felt joyful. The bike traveled along the village road toward Huyen and Apo's small house. Huyen carried the bamboo table out from inside the house and placed it neatly on the ground in front of the porch. She looked around to find a suitable spot, then went back inside. Huyen took a bamboo tray, carefully placed the newly purchased joss paper and gold on it from the market inside. She carried the tray outside and gently placed it on the bamboo table. Huyen straightened each stack of joss paper and gold, preparing everything for the Ancestor memorial ceremony. De and Apo's motorcycle just stopped in front of the house porch, and Micah was sitting there peeling garlic when she looked up. Seeing De, she happily exclaimed, "Uncle De." Huyen, hearing her call, immediately stepped out from inside the house. De smiled, raising the fishing net with some crabs inside high so that the 2 of them could see. He caught these big crabs and brought them over for Micah and her to eat. Micah happily ran over, looking at the crabs crawling in the net, then smiled broadly. Huyen looked at the big crabs, feeling both happy and a bit worried, and said, "Oh, such big crabs! Why Don and Apo's? Do you sell them for money?" De kindly and gently replied, "Just a few crabs. I caught them, so I brought them here for you and your mom to eat. Why sell them?" Huyen softly smiled, feeling warm inside. De raised 2 small wooden chairs that he brought along and held them up in front of Huyen, then happily said, end quote, I just got these 2 chairs, bringing them over for you and your mother to sit on. Having extra chairs outside on the porch is also convenient." End quote. Huyen stepped forward, gently took the chairs from De and Apo's hands. She looked at the chairs and smiled. End quote. "Thank you, dear. You always think of us." End quote. De just smiled kindly and waved his hand. End quote. "It and Apo's nothing, dear. If I have useful things, I bring them over for you and your mother." End quote. Micah happily ran over beside them, touching the new chair. Huyen placed the 2 chairs neatly on the porch, feeling happy because the small house now had more simple yet useful items. De saw the bamboo Huyen had neatly arranged in front of the porch, with a bamboo tray of joss paper on the table. He was a bit surprised and turned to ask, "What is today, dear?" Huyen gently looked at the altar and replied, "Today is my father and Apo's memorial day, sir." Hearing that, De nodded, looked at the crabs in the scoop and cheerfully said, "Then these crabs should be boiled and offered to him. Freshly caught crabs. He would be happy to see you preparing a thoughtful meal." Huyen listened to De and smiled softly. She took the crab scoop, feeling warm inside because De not only helped her mother and her, but also always cared about important family matters. De carried the crab net into the kitchen, placed it next to the water jar, and sat down. He poured the crabs into a plastic basin, scooped water to wash each one thoroughly, carefully cleaning the mud and dirt on the shells and claws. Huyen and Micah also came over to sit beside him. Micah watched the large crabs crawling in the basin with eyes full of delight. "Mom, the crabs are so big." Huyen laughed softly and replied, "Yes, Uncle De caught them today." Micah reached out to touch the crab claws but pulled back her hand, afraid of being pinched. De looked at her excited face and chuckled. Huyen was holding a crab in her hand to wash, and De looked at her, smiling unconsciously. The scene in the small kitchen became cheerful and warm. The 3 of them washed the crabs together, preparing the dishes for the offering table on Huyen's father's Memorial Day. Huyen took out the cooked eggs from the pot, placed them in a bamboo basket to cool down, then sat down to peel each one. She gently removed the shells, revealing the clean white eggs, neatly arranged aside in preparation for the offering tray. Next to her, De washed each crab thoroughly, scrubbing the shells and claws, then all placed into a pot. He added just enough water, put the pot on the stove and added some firewood. The flames quickly ignited, and the crackling sound of burning wood filled the small kitchen. Seeing De cooking the crabs, Micah curiously ran over and stood beside him, watching intently into the pot. De, are the crabs almost done? She asked. De turned and smiled almost. Micah, stand a little farther from the stove, it and appos, es very hot, he advised. Micah obediently stepped back but still stayed nearby to observe. Huyen, peeling eggs, looked at the two of them and smiled softly. The small kitchen was filled with the warm atmosphere of a family preparing the meal together for the Memorial Day. Huyen looked at the pot of crabs boiling on the stove and then turned to De, saying, please help me cook here, I'm going to the garden to pick some flowers. De nodded, okay, go ahead. I and appos. Ella watched the pot of crabs Huyen stepped outside into the garden, walking among the green rows of plants, searching for wildflowers in bloom. She chose the most beautiful and fresh flowers, carefully bending down to cut each stem. After a while, Huyen had gathered a small bouquet of colorful flowers. She carried the bouquet back into the house. At this moment, De had prepared a small plastic bottle cut in half, using the bottom part as a vase. He poured clean water into the vase. Huyen gently arranged each flower into the vase, adjusting them so that the blossoms spread evenly and looked beautiful. The wild bouquet, though simple, looked very fresh, making the table in front of the house look warmer. Micah stood beside her, attentively watching her mother arrange the flowers, occasionally pointing at the beautiful blooms. Huyen looked at her handiwork and smiled. Huyen gently carried the flower vase just arranged outside, placing it neatly on the bamboo table in front of the house porch. The fresh wildflowers made the altar simple yet warm. De stood beside her, suddenly noticing a small flower still lingering in Huyen and appos' hair. He gently reached out and picked the flower down, then smiled. Huyen felt a bit shy, smiled softly and said, help me peel the durian, please. Yes, let me peel it for you. De took the remaining durian and carefully used a knife to separate each section of the shell. The golden, fragrant durian segments appeared one after another. He took each segment and placed it on a plate, then handed it to Huyen. Huyen gently arranged the golden durian segments on the plate, then placed the plate on the bamboo tray on the altar table. She adjusted the position of the durian plate next to the flower vase and the incense offerings. The two of them entered the kitchen together. Huyen prepared a bowl of rice for the offering, filling it very full. She scooped 2 bowls of plain rice and gently inverted them to form a neat portion to place on the offering tray. Next to her, De opened the lid of the pot to check. The crabs were already red and emitting an enticing aroma. He carefully picked out each crab, arranged them neatly on a plate, and carried them outside to place on the offering tray. Huyen also brought out her bowl of rice for the offering. She gently placed the bowl on the tray, then took a peeled egg and carefully placed it on top of the rice. De stood beside her, watching the tray gradually become fuller. Huyen adjusted each item to make them look tidy. Although the meal was simple, it was prepared with all her reverence and contained the love she had for her late father. The offering table has been prepared. Huyen took 3 incense sticks, lit them, and gently lit the incense. She turned to call Micah. Micah, come here with Mom. Micah obediently stepped over to her mother. Huyen knelt in front of the altar, clasped her hands in front of her chest, and bowed her head reverently. Micah also knelt beside her mother, mimicking her clasped hands, with her eyes directed toward the altar. Da stood behind, looking at the scene before him, then gently asked, "May I also kneel and pay respects to uncle?" Huyen turned to look at Da, nodded softly. "Yes, you may." Da stepped forward, knelt beside the mother and daughter. He clasped his hands in front of his chest and, together with Huyen, respectfully faced the altar. The incense smoke slowly rose in the quiet space, carrying the remembrance and reverence of the three for the deceased father. Huyen bowed her head slightly, Micah obediently followed her mother, and Da silently began his prayer. In front of the simple altar, the three knelt together, creating a peaceful and warm moment on the memorial day. Huyen is still kneeling in front of the altar, watching the smoke from the incense rise, and suddenly memories of her father flood back. Her eyes are red, and a tear quietly falls down her cheek. Seeing this, Da quickly gently wipes her tears. He looks at her with a warm voice, and quote, "Come on, dear. The person who has passed away is gone. Your important task now is to raise little Micah well. You must try to live strongly, take care of your child, and take care of your life and your child and Appo's life." End quote. Huyen remains silent, her eyes still shimmering with tears. She gently nods, glancing at Micah, who is obediently kneeling beside her. Looking at her daughter, Huyen tries to hold back her emotions and softly smiles. She understands that despite many difficulties in life, she must continue to be strong for Micah. Da sits quietly beside her, as someone always ready to support the two of them through the days ahead. After the prayer, Da, Huyen, and Micah went into the kitchen together. Huyen took a clean bowl, handed it to Da, and said, end quote, "Please help me serve the soup." End quote. Da nodded, opened the lid of the pot, and carefully scooped the hot soup into the bowl. The steam rose up, carrying the aroma of the freshly cooked soup. Huyen gently took the bowl of soup from Da and Appo's hands, holding it carefully with both hands, and then she and Micah stepped outside. She placed the bowl neatly on the offering tray, next to the crab dish and the rice bowl. Da stood beside, looking at the full offering tray, while Micah curiously looked at the dishes on the tray. The three of them adjusted everything to make it neat. The incense on the altar gradually burned out. I stood up, went to the garden to cut a piece of banana leaf, and brought it back to spread on a clean patch of ground to prepare for burning the paper offerings. He, Huyen, and Micah clasped their hands and bowed before the altar one last time, then carefully took the paper offerings outside. I lit the fire, placing stacks of paper offerings onto the burning flames. Huyen sat beside me, Micah also sat near her mother, and the three of us together burned the paper offerings. The pieces of paper gradually turned to ash and floated lightly with the breeze. Sitting by the fire, Huyen suddenly turned to look at me. At that moment I also looked up and caught her gaze. We looked at each other for a moment, then both smiled. No one said anything, but the companionship and care for each other seemed to have become a natural thing. Micah sat beside me, still focused on the flames, while Huyen and I continued to burn the paper offerings together in the peaceful afternoon. After the ritual and the burning of the paper money, the three of them together cleared the meal onto a bamboo table in front of the house porch. As dusk gradually fell, the last rays of sunlight gently bathed the garden. Huyen, Da, and Micah sat together, enjoying a simple meal on the father and Appo's Memorial Day. Da carefully peeled each piece of crab meat, removing the hard shell, and handed it to Micah. End quote. "Try some, dear, the crab is very delicious." End quote. Micah eagerly tasted the first piece of crab, her eyes shining with delight. End quote. "It and Appo's so tasty, Uncle Da." End quote. Da looked at the child eating happily and smiled. This was Micah and Appo's first time eating crab, so she ate while curiously looking at the large crab claw on the table. Da broke off another piece of crab and placed it in Huyen and Appo's bowl. Huyen tasted it and happily said, end quote, "The crab is very good, brother. All female crabs with lots of roe. This is the first time I've had such delicious crab." End quote. De just smiled gently and said, and quote, "Eat a lot, you and Micah. Today is my father and Appo's Memorial Day, so whatever delicious food there is, you and your mother can eat happily." End quote. Huyen peeled a piece of delicious crab meat, gently brought it towards Da and said, "Eat it." Da lightly shook his head, smiling. "You and your mother eat first. Let Micah eat. I Don and Appo's tea need it." Huyen still held the crab piece in front of him and softly said, "Eat a piece for my happiness." Seeing Huyen say that, Da had no choice but to smile and open his mouth to eat the crab she fed him. Micah sat beside them watching the two and smiling happily. Huyen also laughed, continuing to peel crab for her child. The three of them gathered around a bamboo table under the sunset. While eating, they happily chatted, the simple sounds of laughter echoing in the small house. A day of heartfelt remembrance ended with warmth, love, and peace shared among the three of them. If everyone loves Huyen and Micah and Appo's mother and child, please subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and leave a word of encouragement for the two of them to see the next developments. Every follow and every loving comment from everyone will be a source of comfort and strength to help Huyen get through difficult times. Thank you all very much.